All right, good morning. Paula English here. This is our Paragon Living Institute Library Card Support Call, and thanks everybody for dialing in. Today we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurial thinking. We'll review that area in the library. The first thing that came up today in just queries for conversation is the idea of self-study. If you land here for the very first time, we've got a really nice layout of 4 different areas of the library. We have our 5 Steps classroom, our Communicating and Selling Effectively classroom, which of course goes with our Recipe for Conversation. We have our free training calls, which we know is open to the whole wide world, and we have our member area. And as a subscriber, you have access to all of this. Self-study is, I don't know if I'd say it's easy. It's sort of like being an entrepreneur. If there's not a boss or a schedule or a teacher or homework, how do we really get in the habit of working or studying or doing the things that we have in our mind to do, and then we wake up and it's a new day and there's a whole other list of things to do as well? First, I think, for self-study is there needs to be a goal. What makes this a little different than traditional education is, at this point so far, we don't have a degree program. So if you were going to another kind of online school, if you registered for another kind of school, they would have a path to a degree program, right? So you would go into the curriculum and they'd say, do these things, and then you graduate from that, and then you do these things and you graduate from that, and ultimately when you've completed all the work, you earn your degree. Now, wouldn't that be awesome if someday we actually have accreditation to do degrees? That would be really neat. Right this minute, we don't. So you don't have that finish line in front of you. So my suggestion, as you take a look at this library and say, where am I going with this? Even Marilyn, you mentioned that now you've listened to so many things and you've got all these pages of notes, and how do you organize it? What I would look at is go back to our basis of our 13 key elements. And by the way, if you have not yet listened to the 13 key elements, it's just a 10-minute call, and it's an overview of your 5 steps and your recipe for conversation. Those are your 13 key elements, right? 5 steps and then 8 components to the recipe. That's 13. As you're thinking about your finish line, if you will, the big objective, the overall objective for any of this study is the ability to overcome obstacles, to have the resources and the ability to tap into resources and tools that whenever you get stuck, whenever there's a sense of inertia, or I don't know what to do, or I'm not comfortable with this, or that thing I just did didn't work the way I wanted it to, or I have something coming up that I want to prepare for, I would suggest that you organize and study with the idea of really learning our 13 key elements. My experience in coaching and training has been that pretty much every obstacle that I've ever heard or run across can be overcome through one or several of the 13 key elements. So as you're organizing your thinking, as you're kind of creating your plan for study, list out your 13 key elements. And you can go through that call, and it'll take you through each one. And, of course, you can review your 5 steps and your recipe for conversation. And organize your notes. Organize your thinking by those 13 key elements. So whenever you think, well, I feel really good about my image. I'm clear on who I am. I'm clear on my point of attraction. I feel comfortable talking about what I do and who I am if someone asks me. Great. You can check that little obstacle off. But any conversation or calls or notes that have to do with that sense of image, our point of attraction, file them there. When we think about who are we going to do it to, with, or for? How do we find those people? Where are they? How do we talk to them? How do I design my text or conversation or presentation around my target market? File those classes, those notes in target market. So again, when you hit the obstacle, you can go right back to your notes, to your study, to the library, and direct yourself to the piece, to the training, the call, or even the part of the call that addresses that issue specifically. So as you think about what's the finish line is really having a good understanding and command of those 13 key elements. If we were on a game show, you could give me any obstacle that you come up with, and I'll go to one of those 13 key elements, and we can figure out a way to overcome that obstacle. And again, sometimes it's more than one. It may be our image and a little charisma, maybe our target market and setting objectives. There may be combinations of the 13 key elements working together because they all move. It's very flexible. We have them lined up in a row, and yet they work together. They're always at work. So part of my tip for self-study is always be thinking in terms of overcoming obstacles. Once we get in the swing of things and you have your 5 steps in place, you've created some activity series, you have your plan of action going, building and developing, building and developing, building and developing, got your tools, you're at work making that happen, then you hit an obstacle and you say, okay, what obstacle, if I could overcome it, would help me right now, move my business ahead right now? And you go right back to your 13 key elements and you just go down the list. Is it my image? No. Is it my target market? No. Is it my resources? Well, maybe. All right, so let's go review those classes. Let's review my notes on resources. And every time you do that, you get more proficient. And so obstacles are just a part of the routine. It's just life on the planet. What are we going to eat for dinner? I don't know. Let's think about it. We got to get the food. We got to get the plan. We know who's coming. I mean, everything can be overcome once we understand what the objective is. And we know from our last, I think, 2 calls ago, what do we know is our objective, always and forever? Anybody? What's your number one objective in doing your business?
To have a good database.
That's right. Building and developing a database of people who become your most profitable customer, active referral source, and ideal business partner. So everything you do leads to that point. Because as you do that, that's going to create the money, that's going to create the asset value, that's going to give you whatever you need to reach the goal that you have set for yourself in your business. All right, so any questions about that or any other tips? Anybody else have any ideas for how self-study works for you?
This is Shirley. I just know if I don't put it in my calendar like any other appointment, it's likely to get on the back burner for months. So that's just, and then lately what I've been doing is on my mobile phone, something that I really need to get done, I do an alarm so my phone rings and tells me I need to go do that.
Yeah, I agree. I am absolutely the same way. If it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. Seriously, no matter what it is, it must be on the calendar if I'm going to think about it and remember, because if I'm sure we're all the same, there's lots to do. I can find plenty of things to do any day, and many of those things have nothing to do with working or generating income. And so if we want to be successful in entrepreneurship and in our education, it must be something that we schedule and plan for. And that's absolute, for sure. All right. So just, again, the reminder, if you would like to hear the call on 13 Key Elements, you can find it in your free training calls right there in the top right-hand side. And there are, again, this is continuing to build in this area. If you notice, again, on the left-hand side, the mentor calls, those are the ones that we've done on Mondays. Image, target market, resources, plan of action, tools. And then today we'll take a few minutes to look into the link that says Entrepreneurial Thinking. Now, this is, again, for people who have a paid subscription to the library, and that would be all of you. So you should have a login, password, user ID, and password to get you in. And these have been some interesting discussion calls. And there was a while, a few years ago, we were doing some vision calls. And it was not the most traditional training. It was a little more on the spiritual side of things, how we think, how our mind works, how we program ourselves. And so some of these first calls tie into our Recipe for Conversation, our Communicating and Selling classes, and are specifically about how we think about what we do. And these, third one down, the affirmations and self-awareness. I know we've talked a little bit about that before on our Monday mentor calls. I found this to be especially important for those of us who work alone. Now, some of you may be very fortunate and have a team around you and people that you work with, or maybe you even have someone that's a partner that works with you. Most of the time, we're out here by ourselves. And what goes on in our affirmations, how we talk to ourselves, our personal awareness of what we think about, those subliminal conversations we have, are very powerful. Now, I know many of you are people who pray. And probably, if you're like me, it's kind of an ongoing conversation. I keep thinking he's going to hang up on me any day now and say, all right, that's enough. But in the meantime, it's an ongoing conversation. And because of that, I'm highly alert to my self-talk. I'm highly aware of what I think about saying before I say it. And this practice of affirmation and self-awareness is a key component, I think, to not only survival, but thriving, having access to all of the abundance of positive thinking that's available. If you are someone who studies Scripture, like I do, it is filled with promises. I mean, today, my reading, have no anxiety about anything. That's a really great self-talk. That's a really great affirmation. And it's a spiritual promise. We're not to be anxious. It's almost a command. Have no anxiety. So as you are, these first 3, 4 calls here in Entrepreneurial Thinking, again, I think are the really important components to the discipline of our thinking. And we must have discipline in what we think about, how we respond, what we say. It's a very important piece to not only the success of our business, but our overall health, mind, body, spirit. The next one, decisions. This is a shorter call, thinking versus feeling. Have you ever been in a presentation or a conversation where you've done your pitch, you've made your offer, and the person says, well, let me think about it? Anybody ever heard those words? Do you hear somebody? Let me think about it.
Yep.
Miss Shirley? Yes? Okay, a couple of you. What does that tell you? When you hear somebody say, let me think about it, what does that trigger for you? What happens for you in that moment?
Yes and no.
You think it's a no, all right? Anybody
I
else?
think it's a no, too.
You think it's a no, all right? Anybody else?
I might need a little more clarification on your request.
Okay, so maybe they're unclear, sure.
I probably gave them too much information.
Maybe too much information.
I probably didn't give them enough.
Maybe not enough. All right, so we don't know. That's the bottom line. We don't know. Here is a scientific fact, and you can listen to this more in detail on the call. Scientific fact. The human person does not make decisions when they're thinking. All decisions are made from emotion. That's a scientific fact. We decide emotionally. You hear people say, what does your heart tell you? What does your gut tell you? Because our decision-making is feeling behavior. So when someone says, I need to think about it, all that means to you is they're no longer in decision-making mode. They cannot now make a decision. It's impossible. So, if you want them to make a decision, you've got to get back into the emotion. And you say, that's great. I understand there's a lot to process sometimes when making shopping choices or deciding about your business future. So tell me, how are you feeling right now? That's a great question. How are you feeling right now? That's really what you need to know. They say, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Well, then Shirley's right. I've given you too much information. They say, well, I'm just still not sure maybe how this is going to work for me. All right, Sue's right. She hasn't given them enough information. They say, well, honestly, I just don't feel like I can afford it. Okay, well, Diane's right. It's a no. They can't afford it. But you don't know until you know how they feel. Great call. Highly recommend it. Important awareness in our conversations with people especially when we talk about decision making. Setting goals, the new year. Again, our 13 key elements is in there. It's one of my favorites. The negative question. That's another one where if somebody asks something or says something that we perceive as negative, overcoming the obstacle, we're going to go back to our 13 key elements. We're going to talk about how to create agreement. Creating agreement does not mean that we agree with their opinion, nor does it mean that they agree with ours. But it does mean that we have agreement in our conversation. I'm going to ask, there's somebody moving around a little bit. If you are not just sitting still in front of your computer, could you please mute your phone for me? Don't go away, just maybe mute, and then unmute when you want to talk to me. Okay, so the negative question, we're going to go back to our 13 key elements. That's going to direct us to creating agreement. Old perceptions of network marketing, that's another great one. If you hear things like, oh, is this a pyramid? Or it's the products with network marketing are more expensive because they have to pay everybody. We hear all kinds of goofy things. I have to recruit my friends and family, or I have to buy stuff I don't want. That's a really great call for helping somebody understand the more positive aspects of your business. The value of network marketing, I believe that's going to tell you a little bit more about building your asset, why people buy. Great thing to know. Wouldn't you like to know? Why do people buy? One of my favorite conversations. We talk a little bit about the convention, conversations around recipe for conversation. That also might be a good one, Marilyn. If you haven't listened to that, that might have some tips there from the recipe for conversation, kind of filling in. And these next ones are business conversations. These are fun because we're looking at the business and the recruiting. In fact, this first one, you believe that your product is extraordinary. And if you can believe it, your business is even better. If you love your product and you feel really comfortable leading with the products, if you learn and understand the real truth about your business, it's even better. That's a great motivator, particularly if you're looking at recruiting. The last three are from several years ago. I believe, though, the math problem is still applicable to highlight how to talk about the money.
This is the very best part of every single Monday when I'm on this call with you. I mean, it just totally energizes my whole being.
That's
and thank
great.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for saying that. It makes me happy to be of service. That is the answer to my prayer. So thank you for being here and allowing me to be that part of your life.
Well, God has certainly gifted you, and it's our privilege.
Well, thank you so much. You're a sweetheart for saying so. Hope you all have a great week. Keep me posted. Send me an email if there's something I can do for you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Have a great day.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paula.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.